Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 57th episode of the Online Tennis Podcast. Today it's me, Jack, and I am joined by Damian Kust. How are you, Damian?
Oh, fine. I'm always happy to come here and help you out a bit if you have an opening, and obviously excited to talk about all this stuff because I don't really get to talk about the main tour that often, honestly.
Yeah, true. You don't talk about it that often at all. Damien specifically is referencing the Poland Open. He was there this week. I'm sure he saw a lot. He was on the ground. Saw a few of your tweets, Damien. You caught Garcia Swiatek at least. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff you get to talk about as well. Maybe a few negatives by the sounds of it. We'll see what Damien's got to say exactly. We are also going to cover, while we're at it though, a little bit on Umag and Jannik Sinner's title there, Minaur in Atlanta, Kitzbuhel, RBA won a title there, and a little bit on Bouzkova in Prague. It won't be too long. We'll probably focus on the Poland Open mainly. So stick around and we'll try and get as much in as possible in a short frame of time. Damien, happy to start with the Poland Open. What was your experience like? Did you enjoy it? What didn't you enjoy?
Yeah, that's where the negatives come in, sort of, because honestly, for the most part, I feel like having journalists at an event like that is a big waste of money and time. Like,
Oh.
there's really, when you go to a challenger, and I'm really excited to go to a lower tier event right now because honestly, it's just not my thing. I've been to an ATP 250 on the men's side, I've been to an WTA 250 right now, and it's really not my thing. If I go to a main tour event in the future, it's going to be something bigger to see how it's like, because
Mm-hmm.
honestly 250s, you get you pretty much get no access to players unless you like talk to the lady from the WTA, and then you can organize it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing like the low-key atmosphere of challengers. It's nothing like just coming up to players by yourself. And I mean, they agree or not, but I
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think I've ever had I don't think I've ever had any rejections there. So like it's really another world in terms of the organization. Probably as well because Świątek was there. They were expecting some sort of a big boom. If they couldn't really just let the crowds get to like her because it would be wild. She also had two personal bodyguards
Right.
just for this event, so they
Mm-hmm.
were expecting some trouble. That's for sure. But yeah, even if as a fan you wanted to get an autograph or something, on the outside courts, it was sort of possible because,
Mm-hmm.
but just when the players were walking off the court, because we didn't even as the media, we didn't have access to training courts, we didn't have access to the entrances where the players enter the outside courts, and from
Mm-hmm.
center, like the fans would have absolutely zero chance to interact with the player in any way. So I don't think that's a particularly great experience for an audience member. I don't think it's great for a journalist either. I think what I meant with this, I think I have a great example for what I meant with wasting time and money, because on Saturday, for example, our work basically looked like um, we watched. You could watch the matches, of course. The tickets were expensive, so it's great that you get there for free and all. But then the lady from the WTA who was there, she went to Garcia, she went to Bogdan, and recorded like their 3 minutes interviews, utterances, whatever, and sent
Mm-hmm.
them over to like the press officer sent them over to all the journalists in an email. So why are we even there? Why did we get dinner? Why did we
Yeah.
get drinks? Like what sense
Yeah.
does it even make? I'm not sure. On some days there were press conferences, mostly with Świątek, but that was kind of like at least there was a point.
Yeah.
So why we were all doing this, why we were all there? Because on Saturday the articles that were created by almost everyone, they might as well have been just watched on stream, and then these interviews would get sent to you and you put in the quotes. So in a way, I think it's a bit of a waste.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not my style.
Right. Fair enough. I'm taking notes because I'm thinking about going to smaller
Hmm.
tournaments as well. Obviously, though, somebody like yourself, you have definitely sort of your profile is challenger. So in some ways, I envy you. That would be really cool to keep doing that because I think that could keep picking up, especially if you, as you say, it's much easier to get a more personal
Hmm.
sort of way to present media to people. That's what people want. That's what people
Yeah.
want online. I think anything that's sort of gatekept like that, that's just gonna that's two steps back basically. So I totally agree with you. I think it's a very backwards way of doing things, and it's not going to garner more of an audience. Or, if you're trying to target people that are sort of 20 to 30. It's not going to work because you need it to be a little bit more fluid. You need fan interaction, stuff that's a little bit funny, stuff that just feels a bit more natural. It's a shame because I sometimes think the ATP and the WTA are moving in the right direction for that sort of thing, and then you come out with stuff like this, Damien. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, you obviously you could do a lot more stuff in terms of, like, as you said, just unique content. It really depends on what you want to do, or what the organizers allow you for. But most people, most journalists who will come there, the content will be pretty much the same. And for me, I mean, it doesn't really make sense. When we go to a challenger event, everyone produces its own, and everyone is unique. Everyone is something fresh. And here, I mean, I don't really think it made a lot of sense for me to be there. But well, and yeah, as you also mentioned, I mean, I think it just comes, with the bigger names, the bigger organization, the security has to be better. But here, the security was just very annoying, and there were a lot of rules that sort of actually forbid you from watching tennis. I'm not saying they should let the people enter as they come and please on the stands. Of course, some rules have to be. You have to stick with some rules. But for example, on the outside courts, a lot of doubles was played there. And when Polish players were competing, the stands were like the seats just weren't enough, and there was no
yeah,
option to watch it, like, just from the side of the court. You had
yeah,
to stand like from away, way behind the fence, and it just a little bit. I mean, the guys paid for the tickets, right? They didn't pay for the
yeah.
tickets actively, like for court number two, because it's all center court tickets, but you also get access there. But
Yeah, you've got a grounds
not many
pass,
people,
right?
yeah, so like a grounds pass, and not many people could actually watch. And it's I understand where they're coming from. Obviously, security professionals are not tennis fans. Someone told them to act this way. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of things like that. Like one time, a lady wouldn't let people in because the set ended at 7-5, and they told her
Mm-hmm.
that she can only let people in when the games are on an odd number.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
was seven
Yeah.
five, and she wouldn't let people in, and I
Yeah.
actually had to, like, talk to her and try to make
Like,
her change her mind, but it was
yeah,
tough.
because obviously the change of ends at One Love would be much shorter than the one at 7-5, so
Oh,
totally
yeah,
backwards.
that's another thing. Yeah, and there was
Yeah.
also a security guy who wouldn't let another some guy with a ticket on the outside court, because he for some reason claimed that that he doesn't have the ticket for this. Meanwhile, all
Mm.
center court, yeah, as you said, there was a grounds pass basically with the center court ticket. So it was really just a big mess. I was even like, at some point I was even afraid that they were going to revoke my credentials, because I was standing on this staircase, and you can see the center court from it, and
Yeah. Okay.
they were playing, so I couldn't actually enter the stands at that point. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna see a game from here, and then go to my seat, or wherever. But this security guy came, and he asked me to move somewhere, because you can't stand there, because it's a staircase. It's like a very wide staircase. No one was walking, but I mean, I just said that, okay, I cannot really do what you're telling me to do right now, because they're playing. But after a game finishes, so he took my press pass.
Rebelling, Damien.
Yeah,
You're
he took
rebelling.
my
I love
press pass, and
it.
he got some numbers off the back of it, and he,
Wow.
like, wouldn't
Okay.
even tell me what he was going to do with it, because that's what I asked, and he said something like, "You'll see," or something like that. But no one ever talked to me about this, so I have no clue. Yeah, but
Jeez,
yeah,
though.
there's just a lot of yeah, the security around the players, around everything, is just very strict, and
Mm.
it's not really my style, and I also don't think it's like the best fun experience. But we see a lot of
Yeah.
these tournaments, like, I don't know, Indian Wells comes to mind first, because of all these selfies that Lawanda does. And but
Yeah.
many other tournaments have this, like, I don't know how to call it, mix zone, a meetup zone, where
Yeah.
players are
Yeah.
walking,
Hmm.
and you can so you can at least interact with them for like a brief second. And here it was not really allowed, not really given, and I think that's a big mistake, as you said, in terms of just going into the 21st century, improving the fun
Yeah,
experience. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So good and bad stuff, Damien. I'm still quite jealous of your excursion. Need to get to a tournament again. It's been well, apart from Wimbledon, it's been a while. You did get to see Swiatek v Garcia,
Oh yeah.
didn't you? Just a few stats on that before I dive into some of the stuff that I know Damien analysed. Swiatek hadn't lost a match on clay in 18 matches. French Open last year was our last loss to Maria Sakkari. Had won Stuttgart, Rome and French in the meantime this year. Should we have been surprised at the loss, though? Obviously, yeah, it's surprising, fine, but Garcia was in fine form. 15 of her last 18 matches won. Had won at least 2 matches in her last 4 events, including the title in Baden-Württemberg. Good to see her coming back to form in general, to be honest. Her first career win over a world number 1 was previously Love 7. There was a bunch of different ways that Garcia was able to attack Swiatek, but in particular, it's got to be the return of serve, probably. And you did clock that in your photos, Damien. You said extremely aggressive return position. For me, for people to take Swiatek's serve on early, it is seriously difficult because of the kick and because of the sort of reaction off of the clay. Seeing that live, did you really appreciate the hand-eye coordination of Garcia? Was it the footwork that was super impressive? I mean, it looked really, really good on the TV, but it's quite hard to tell how difficult it is when she makes it look so easy. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
she totally made it look easy. And the past
Yeah.
year, we've been talking a lot. The past year, I mean, 2022, we've been talking a lot about Swiatek improving her serve, and then Garcia just
Yeah.
comes out and does exactly the same what she did against Doi and Cocciaretto in the earlier rounds. And the thing is, against Doi, she was framing everything with that tactic. I was even like,
Right.
I think she was down a break 4-3 in the second, and I was wondering whether she'd change something, whether she's even capable of playing a different way, and apparently
Yeah.
not really, but it worked out. And
Yeah.
then she comes out against Swiatek and does everything. I think that the kicker is actually quite well, not easy, but when you're standing inside the baseline, you don't really feel the effect of it, I suppose. You just take it.
Well, yeah, it's not high
Yeah, you,
up.
ju- you just
Yeah.
take it
Yeah.
super early, and it seems easy. I mean, if you say it like that, it's totally
Yeah.
looks easy if you watch Garcia do it. Obviously, I can't really, like, there are power players on the tour, of course. There are power players who have more pop, who have more acceleration than Karen Garcia, for sure. But I honestly struggle to find a single WTA tour player who could do that to Swiatek. Like, obviously, beat her.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women, that's for sure. But just
Yeah.
do this the way that Garcia did it. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone takes it
The
as this early, right?
the not on
Hmm.
clay, definitely. The only other player that comes to mind this year was Danielle Collins in
Oh
the
yeah,
Australian Open.
oh yeah.
Her ability to take on the backhand in particular. I mean, I think Swiatek won like 1 point on
Yeah, but
second
there was
serve or
also
something
that
like that for the
issue,
match.
with the, like, there was a graph which showed where Swiatek put her second serve in, and it was like
Yeah.
almost only
Oh yeah.
Colin,
Yeah.
the
Of
Collins
course.
backhand. So
Yeah.
there, I
Yeah.
think we could also talk about some tactical issues. I think here
Yeah.
as the match went on, she actually improved her second serve quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She was she was actually catching Garcia off guard from time to time. After the match,
Yep.
Fiontek talked a bit about how Garcia was reading it very well. So I suppose
Yeah.
that's something. But I think the preparation for this match was also pretty wrong, because apparently they trained a few days beforehand, and on during that
Mm-hmm.
session, Garcia was actually doing to her serve, the very same thing that she did in the match, just absolutely obliterating it. And Świątek, well,
Mm-hmm.
at first, one thing she thought was that she had a good second serve and that it was probably going to be enough. And the second
Mm-hmm.
thing she thought was that, well, Garcia can do it during practice because she's loose, because there's no pressure. But in a match situation, it's not going to be like that. I think if she, well, it's not really the correct mindset to me, mostly as she
Mm-hmm.
cannot really say that things like, I have a good second serve, I don't have to work on my serve. It's a part of her
Yep.
game that can still be improved. Obviously, if you're winning
Yeah.
37 matches in a row, then you might sort of fall into that trap where you're thinking,
Yeah.
I'm so good, I don't really have to improve much. But
Well,
there's things to improve.
two things
Hmm.
on Two things on that, just before I
Yeah.
forget, Damien. One thing she did say mid-streak is that she was aware there was stuff she needed to improve in her game. It didn't matter how many matches she won. And I mean, the serve will 100% be what she was talking about. She didn't specifically say what she was talking about because she didn't want to give stuff away. But the serve must have been the thing she was talking about. Because in that first set, exactly what you're saying there, so many of those first serves were still kind of down the middle of the court. And I think she thought she could beat Garcia, off any serve delivery alone, and then from the back of the court she'd be fine. And obviously, maybe got taken aback by that crazy tactic, I guess, because the first serve is still not that good. It really isn't that good. I know, like she comes out with when she had to spot serve in the third set, she came up with some good ones, but she didn't come up with them consistently enough to counter a tactic like Garcia was using, basically. So I really think with her back against the wall, it starts to show you how Swiatek's serve really is vulnerable and how she's not comfortable placing it basically consistently.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting match, Damien.
No,
Sorry,
I
go on.
just wanted to say that also. I think for me, a big part of her run was the serve plus one forehand, and you need to get a good serve in to get a short reply, and then finish the point this way. So Garcia basically took that away from her, of course, and yeah, as you said, whenever the rally was neutral, definitely Swiatek was the better player. She was able to move Garcia, even though compared to some other power players, Garcia can still rally. So that's that was something that made her even tougher to beat here. But when she had that little bit of extra space and time, then she was able to turn it around in her favor. But she just in the best moments of Garcia, she just didn't get that at all. And also one thing that you said at the beginning, like you asked like a semi-rhetorical question, I think whether we should be surprised about this. I think looking at the draw at first, because obviously it wasn't really the whole list wasn't strong. It's just not going to be like that in this space in the calendar. I think they added one more WTA event on clay, like in October in Italy, but it's technically the last event on clay, and also just everyone wants to play hard courts right now, so it's not going to be stronger. But if we were looking at the entry list at the draw, then Garcia was probably the only opponent who actually posed any threat to Swiatek. So
Yeah.
in a way, I guess it wasn't that surprising, especially as I don't know if how like well known it is. I was actually expecting it to be a little different, but Swiatek only started practicing on clay 2 days before the event. She was practicing on hard for 2 weeks and then just jumped to clay for just that one single tournament. I actually, like, obviously she didn't want to say no to her father because he's one of the organizers, so that's why she played it. But I suspect that next year we might not be seeing her in Warsaw, because that just seems like a very, very wrong choice in terms of scheduling, and it could
Yeah.
even jeopardize her chances in the North American swing.
Yeah. It must have been our first 250 in like 2 years or something.
Come again?
It must have been our first 250 event in about 2 years or so, I believe.
No.
It might have been 2020. I don't think she played one in 2021. So, what you were saying there. It was, sorry, that was it. The way Garcia was able to attack Swiatek's forehand, akin to Samsonova earlier this year, using the serve to set up an aggressive forehand, taking the first opportunity to hit an aggressive forehand. However, I would say, and I think this could tie into what you were saying about the 2-day practice, Swiatek's serve has never been good, really. So that wasn't much of a surprise that it wasn't, it was vulnerable. But her defensive forehand play, I think, has been a lot better for most of the clay season. So I think coming out of the clay season and being expected to dive straight back in, I think maybe shots like that suffered a bit. I think that was probably the least impressive part of her game. Compared to the crazy highs we've seen earlier in the year, obviously it was still impressive in some instances, but we've seen much better performances off the defensive forehand from Swiatek than we did against Garcia, I would say. A few stats just to tie that up. Swiatek's now lost her last 2 matches against French women, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Drops to 13-2 in WTA quarterfinals, crazy record. Garcia improves to 9-3 in finals, first title on clay since 2016. So, I mean, Garcia's progress, very exciting. I'm really excited to see what happens with her in some of the slams and stuff, some of the big events. Fingers crossed for her because she's such a likable player.
Yeah, I'm checking that 2000. I'm checking that 250 stat, and it looks like she hadn't played one since Birmingham 2019. If that's a 250, if
2019.
that's a
Oof.
250, because I'm actually not sure.
Ooh.
No, it's not a
What,
250. So it's gonna
right.
be Prague 2019. So yeah, over 3 years. And this one
What was the
is
one she lost? She lost a final to Herzog. Is that the last one she played? Maybe.
yeah, she played that one where she in Lugano where she lost to Herzog, but then she also played Prague.
Right.
Her next event she qualified and lost to Muchova. That's like one of the if you asked people to give you Swiatek's 7 clay losses, then they'd probably be able to tell you 6, but not the Muchova one, because that kind of
Okay.
got lost in the I don't know. I don't know in what, but yeah, this is the one after the one tournament after Lugano, and that was her last 250. And especially as this one is in a very weird spot in the calendar for her, yeah, I don't think she'll be. I don't think she'll
Yeah.
be playing that. Although obviously for tennis in Poland, it's absolutely huge. For the event, it's absolutely huge. So they will be desperate to keep her in.
Yeah. Of course. I'm sure most of the budget will go towards that. Happy to move on.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to dive into Umag, where Jannik Sinner was able to beat Carlos Alcaraz in the final. We're just going to cover that basically. Bizarre look into Alcaraz's peaks and troughs once more. Did you see much of this final,
yeah,
Damon? Yeah. Level in the first set I thought was phenomenal, and few would have come through against Sinner playing like that. I thought Sinner's level kind of remained pretty level throughout the match. It was exceptionally high, probably about 8 out of 10. You could maybe say Alcaraz was 9 out of 10 in that first set, and then Alcaraz dipped hard in the second and third. We haven't really seen a loss like that from him for this year for sure. Got to chalk it down to a one-off, maybe, but I do think it's interesting to see him lose 2-6-1 sets in a row, and it probably stems to the serve, I would say. Which, if you're going to roll in kickers against somebody with a decent backhand return, I wouldn't expect to get an easy time. Basically, last 4 losses: Zverev, Djokovic, Sinner, and Musetti. Certainly, his backhand return on clay is very impressive. I would say folk that are able to generate plenty of topspin on the backhand return tend to be the ones that can constantly pressurise Alcaraz. What was your take on the match, Damien? Did you enjoy it or?
yeah. I honestly just don't think he played his best in Hamburg or Umag. There were some decent moments, of course. The one in the one against Kachanov in Hamburg, of course, but most
Yeah.
of the time it was just really good problem solving and coming through despite not really playing what we saw from him in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you could kind of maybe wonder if Hamburg and Umag were really needed,
Yeah.
because yeah, why do you need Umag there? But for Sinner, I guess it's the same. Sinner even didn't defend his title in Washington. I guess Umag just
Yeah.
has to pay them a lot, really, because for
Yeah.
Sinner and Alcaraz sure is still probably feels like he should play them as much as he can on clay, but for Sinner it was just a really strange choice. So yeah, I just don't think the backhand and return, especially they just haven't been at quite the same level as in the spring for me.
Yeah.
In a lot of his matches recently, return has been a huge issue. He even
Yeah.
struggled, with Zapieri, Kuhn, guys who are pretty much aggressive ball strikers who can hit pretty flat and just dominate him in a way. Even
Yeah.
though Alcaraz obviously likes to be the guy who is controlling the action. So yeah, I just don't think this was a very strong set of tournaments for him. He still made 2 finals, but
I know.
we have
Yeah.
such high expectations of this guy that even 2 finals is like, you couldn't have done more. We're like
I know.
the Asian parents who expect fives only, and 4.5 won't cut it.
That's so true, and yeah, only moves up to fourth in the world now as a result
Yeah,
of
I
those
mean,
two
come
finals.
on,
To
he should be
like,
number one already. Come on.
yeah, exactly. Alcaraz v Italians as well. I don't read too much into this, maybe, but maybe there's something. I don't know. 3 of his 6 losses this year: Berrettini in Australia, Musetti in Hamburg, Sinner and Umag. I mean, to be fair, pretty much all very different players, so it's kind of hard to say that nationality's got any it's the common denominator in those 3 losses. But just an interesting tidbit. It's quite interesting. I think the only one that I've ever thought nationality maybe comes into it is Medvedev v Frenchman, which I think the variety genuinely is something that can kind of throw him off.
I
But
mean, I think he just in this group of Frenchmen, there's also a group like a group that sort of combines a few of these guys. There's a group of flat hitters against whom Medvedev is generally not doing well,
yeah,
and Simon and Manarino just happen to be in both groups,
no, that's true. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's mostly, I think, the issue. I think it's more about specific matchups than the nationality. But yeah, it's a funny stat for sure. Medvedev against Frenchmen, because Alcaraz versus Italians, it's like, yeah, he's just losing 6 matches a year, so even 3 seems like much, but in
Yeah.
reality, it's not that huge, I think.
No, it's not really. I don't think. Um, yeah. Okay. Moving on to that one thing before we go. Yeah, I'm very glad I picked this up because the guy deserves a shout out. Right at the start of the week, Jannik Sinner knocked out Jaume Munar, pretty much second round, I believe. Jaume Munar needs a wee shout out because, quite frankly, he's playing better tennis than his results show this year. Dude is playing really good tennis, but keeps coming up with bad luck. Basically, has lost to either players that are winning the tournament eventually or players that are making incredibly deep runs. I'm going to say Sinner and Umag, Ruud and Gustad, Norrie at Wimbledon, who made the semis,
Pedro
Alcaraz in
Sousa.
Barcelona, Pedro Sousa. Yeah, okay, then you can pick out the ones that are maybe bad losses, but Martinez and Santiago, who won it, Alcaraz and Rio, Schwartzman in Buenos Aires, Cressy in Melbourne, who made the final. He's losing to players a lot of the time that are end up playing really, that end up winning the tournament or do really well in the tournament. I think basically he is gonna break out sooner rather than later without people really realizing what's going on because he's got a very, very difficult game to break down.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. I think for a long while, you couldn't really see how good he's been this year through his rankings at all. On the 18th of April, I'm checking that right now. I don't know that. He was still 101st in the ATP rankings, and that was just like a complete, huge disparity between how well he was playing. I think right now it's getting closer and closer to reality because he's now 57th, just 5 spots off his career high. If we take a look at the ATP race, for example, he's 43rd. Yeah, but I would totally agree that he's been like a fringe, top 30 guy this year. Maybe could have been slightly higher if he got a big win at some point, because I don't really
Yeah,
think he's been there, right?
he's missing that. I think he beats Zverev once, 2019, but apart
Yeah,
from
but I mean
that, he's
this year, this or
this
or
year no.
last year when the points would still count. Yeah, I don't think it happened, and
No.
sometimes it's really mental with him, of course, because the main thing that comes to mind, I think, is the Schwartzman second round at the French, where he was
Yeah.
like completely dominating for 2 sets and then never even threatened to win it. I guess we can't really blame him for the losses to Ruud or Norrie, because Norrie, on grass, that's not a surface for Munar, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But as you said, yeah, I think the one against Pedro Sousa is probably the only bad loss he's had this year, and then he's been
Yeah.
maybe Popperin in Bordeaux, but that was a very high quality match from what I remember. Delbonis in this form, yeah, but it's really slim pickings, and yeah, I totally agree that he should be ranked a few spots higher still, although 57 is already,
It's still decent.
yeah, it's more or less what I think he deserves right now. But yeah, a few months back, it was just completely stupid where he was ranked.
Yeah. I mean, at 57, you're going to get the chances to play the best players in the world pretty consistently. So he will need some big wins, and if he can, I think he'll deliver soon. That's all I'm saying anyway. Yeah, he deserves a wee shout out because poor guy just keeps getting knocked out by
I
the
mean,
people that are winning the tournament.
against high ranked players, there is a game issue, right? He's not really
Yeah, I don't
going
know.
to.
Yeah. No big weapon, I get it, but
Yeah, so that there is an issue with that for sure, and that's also why he's not getting big
yeah,
wins. But even like, he's never going to be an attacking player, of course, and he probably shouldn't be. But even in terms of what he can do with the ball, I think he's improved a lot this year, and this is also why even though he's not at his career high yet, he's definitely he never had a season like this. That's for sure.
Yeah. Moving on to Atlanta, if you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
The final was Alex de Minaur against Jenson Brooksby. A little bit on Jenson Brooksby first, a wee bit of controversy, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me. Should Brooksby be liked or disliked? Stuff like this kind of makes me question it. After he beat Tiafoe, I think 6 match points later or something, he did the LeBron silencer celebration, basically sort of Tiafoe's trademarked after he wins matches generally. Quick handshake from Tiafoe. Don't really get cold handshakes from Tiafoe at all, to be honest. So he obviously took some offence to it, I think. Brooksby has always been like this. I really don't know if I like it. I don't know if I don't think I do like it. Damien, is that right? Should I let him off the hook?
Unpopular opinion here, but I generally really don't care about stuff like that. I
Yeah,
don't need it. I don't need the guy whom I am watching to be a nice person. I really don't care,
yeah,
and I think people have gotten a little bit like too soft. Like when I see the reaction to the Tiafoe celebration, as you said, it's just a little much for what he did. Like,
yeah,
I can understand when people dislike certain individuals like Zverev, Kyrgios, Basilashvili to the some match fixers, dopers to an extent that actually like suspends them from following their tennis. That's understandable to me, although that's not really how I don't relate to this. But Brooksby
mm-hmm.
hasn't done that much, so I think the question like whether he should be disliked or liked, it's everyone's own decision, right?
It
Yeah,
is. It
and
is. I know.
I honestly don't care, although it's definitely an achievement of his to get a cold handshake from TFO, because
Yeah.
Francis just has a good relationship with everyone on the tour. So yeah, if this guy dislikes you, then you're doing something weird. That's for sure.
I know, yeah. The saltiness is quite addictive, to be fair, and it makes me come back for more. But I like to pick and choose players I like and dislike. It's petty, it's drama, but whatever. It's my form of a soap opera, so I kind of enjoy it, Damien. It's good fun. So anyway, yeah, we were vindicated for all the Brooksby haters in the final because de Minaur was able to beat him. A little bit of simplistic analysis in this one. It was quite close, but to be honest, there was a lot more unforced errors coming off the racket of Brooksby compared to his previous rounds. And it is his third final, third loss. He did say that he was nervous in the Tiafoe match as well. I do think nerves played a part, and sometimes that can make a big difference because there was balls he really wasn't missing at all in previous matches against de Minaur. Okay, of course, you've got a guy on the other side of the court that's moving, significantly faster maybe than some of your previous opponents, and de Minaur kind of played Brooksby's game in some ways. He was able to keep himself rock solid from the back of the court. But I still think it's fair enough to say that Brooksby played a worse match for probably the third final in a row. Certainly the Riley Opelka one, he was pretty poor. I'm struggling to remember the other one now.
Anderson, Newport last year.
Yeah, I didn't catch that one actually.
I can't remember much of it. I think it was like a 7-6-6-4, right?
Yeah, it was straight sets.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
I
sure.
can't remember anything from it, honestly. I mean, it was a grass match with Kevin Anderson. We kind of know what happened.
Yeah, but yeah. Certainly in the Opelka one, you would have expected it to be all serving from Opelka, but there was rallies where Brooksby had control and he kind of let it slip in the tie break and stuff. So it's a recurring theme, maybe, and maybe maybe the game style of Brooksby doesn't lend itself to nerves very well because obviously you've got to make sort of 20, 30 balls before you win the point sometimes. But yeah, credit to de Minaur, to be fair, because he can play better tennis than people give him credit for. I think people underrate his serve a lot of the time. That stat from 2019 when he won at Atlanta, didn't face a break point in the whole tournament. I mean, it's mad. The guy, his serve is really good, but his +1 can also be unplayable as well, and his ability to capitalise on the serve is incredibly impressive. Did you catch any of the match, Damien?
I did catch a fair bit of it. I certainly agree with everything you said about Alex de Minaur. I think people are just really sleeping on him right now. Obviously, it's not super flashy. He hasn't gotten a title, or he has gotten a title in Atlanta, but I mean a big title. Not a big Grand Slam run since that US Open or whatever it was. But I think he's been just very slowly improving the parts of his game that he needs to improve, like the serve,
Hmm.
like the performance on the attack in general, like the clay game, which this year was just amazing outside of that one match against Gaston at Roland Garros. Like it
Yeah.
was a bit unfortunate, I suppose, because his worst performance of the clay season came in the most important event. But before that, he was only losing to Zverev, Sinner, Alcaraz, Rublev, and
Yeah.
from what I see,
Yeah.
also Alex Molchan and Leon. Maybe a slightly less lower caliber of
Fine.
a player than Zverev, Sinner, or Alcaraz or Rublev, but still a guy who's already won 250s on clay on multiple occasions. Or maybe am I talking? Am I no? I mean, made the finals because I'm.
Yeah. He
Um,
just won the one,
no, I
didn't
don't
he?
think he. I don't think he's won one. He lost.
Oh, he made the final
He made the
twice, of
final
course.
three
Yeah.
times already. I think Goffin in Marrakesh, Djokovic in Belgrade last year, and this year in Lyon, where he beat the Minaur. I can't remember whom he lost to. But yeah, he's made 250 finals on clay on so many occasions already. Obviously, an improving player for sure. And yeah, I just don't think anyone's really talking about Alex Deminor and all the improvements that
Hmm.
he's made. Very very sad loss for him at Wimbledon, because you would expect him to beat someone like Christian Garin in the fourth round. It really doesn't get,
Yeah.
as much as we can talk about Garin being much better suited to grass than other clay courters are, because he hits kind of flat, pretty good serve, pretty good return, but still, if you're Alex Deminor and you get Christian Garin in the forefront at Wimbledon,
Yeah. A
and
massive
you're two sets
opportunity
up as
lost.
well, right? That's really
Yeah.
sad, and that's probably one of the reasons also why people aren't really are probably
Yeah.
underestimating him at the moment.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, he could be a real threat of the US. Obviously, that's other than Wimbledon. That's where
Yeah,
he's made his best run. So yeah, sixth title for de Minaur overall. Look out for him. Hopefully, he can make a good run at the US. Moving on to Kitzbuhel very quickly, we had RBA Roberto Bautista Agut beating Filip Misolic in the final. Damien, I'm sure you know quite a bit about Misolic, but I'll give everybody the stats first, just before we get a little bit of an insight into his game. It's interesting how little risk RBA needs to take on in a matchup like this. It was a very typical sort of top 20 ranked player plays a player sort of 200 odd rank or 150 odd places below him, whatever it was. Solid as a rock, doesn't have to hit very far past the service line to just keep the rally going and ask Misolic to play all the aggression basically, and absolute clinic and how to do that. It was a really, really impressive match. He had to take on the lion's share of the risk if he wanted to win a point, and it didn't work out enough. Only 4 games dropped. In the final, wins his second title on clay. Previous one was Stuttgart in 2014, so it's been 8 years. Crazy. 11th title overall, which is the 15th most of all active players, which is quite an impressive stat. Yeah, was this a sort of flash in the pan for Misolic? Just home tournament sort of thing, able to come through a decent-ish draw, but nothing too startling. Is his game actually big enough to make it, or is this sort of home
it's a bit
advantage?
of a tough question for sure. I mean, he became a name in tennis last year when he won 5 ITFs, and I certainly thought at some point he would be a threat in challengers. Does he have
Mm.
a super high ceiling? I'm not sure. So there's certainly a very stable, like a very solid base in terms of just his ball striking from the ground. The backhand is insane. Like the amount of backhand down the line winners that he ripped in the Kitzbuhel draw was absurd, and it's very similar to when he made a big run in Zagreb earlier in the year in a challenger, because he was for a few. Well, it wasn't his challenger debut, of course, but he never, especially this year, before Zagreb, he only won one match in the qualies of a challenger and one match in the main draw, and then he just randomly came into Zagreb, qualified with a crazy match against Shang, and then won the whole thing. And yeah, this felt very similar to me, where it sort of
Yeah,
starts with, well, an easy draw, because you have to consider Dutra da Silva and Dujar at this point, something that he hasn't really beaten anyone of note in that Kitzbühel field. And I
yeah,
guess it's also the fact that Kitzbühel was weaker it started from the third seed, Bautista Agut, because Rudan Berrettini withdrew. And I think in a way he was definitely he ran into a wall in the final, and I don't mean that literally that Bautista Agut is a wall, even though he is, of course, but also in
Yeah,
the sense that it just wasn't really his level. I think Misolic to
yeah,
consistently make runs like this, he really needs to grow a bit. He needs to perhaps because at the challenger level, he's one of his traits is probably being solid as well from the ground, and
yeah.
you could see in the match against Bautista Agut a player whose trait is exactly that, but at the higher level
It's solid. Yeah,
it's just not gonna really cut it, especially as Bautista Agut. I think on clay he's not that great, but on clay with altitude, that really suits him. There's just more
yeah,
pop in his even in his weaker backhand, and in general in the serve and forehand, of course, which he's famous for. And
yeah,
yeah, I think in terms of the forehand, there's plenty of room to grow. He should probably Misol should probably try to find ways to be more aggressive with it, but also defend better with it. Like the game is
yeah,
just not ready for this yet, I think. But
yeah.
yeah, beating Hanfman, Lajovic, and Duhar Dutra da Silva, that's not really that surprising from a guy who's been, at least in the past 2 months, was one of the top challenger players before getting injured around
Yeah.
June, July. So it is a shock. I don't think it's instantly repeatable, but there's certainly a very
Hmm.
solid base that he can improve upon. And he, yeah, that's very good to see that he made a run like this, especially as some of these matches against Lajovic and Hanfman were just crazy. This is where the home crowd aspect could
Yeah,
really help him. I think also the semifinal was so unique in that in how it was played out, right? Because they had to come back for the
yeah,
tiebreak
yeah.
of the third set. So
It's hard.
against a more experienced player like Hanfman, against someone with a big serve like Hanfman, that's not really easy to do. But yeah, he wasn't really
Yeah,
tired from this in the final. It just wasn't his level. That's for sure.
yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think with pretty much all of that, one observation I did make in the forehand, and I still don't really know how he gets around this, but he doesn't pull his
Hmm.
body back. You know, that arm, that left arm stays stationary the whole time. So I guess that there's not as much turn in the forehand. I'm sure there's ways around it just by accelerating the wrist a bit faster, but maybe that's the sort of thing that shows up when it's under pressure, and that's why the backhand's a little bit stronger, possibly. Certainly, as a sort of defensive, aggressive weapon, you probably expect more errors to come off the
Hmm.
forehand, even if you can take on aggressive shots with it. So yeah, interesting stuff, and well done, RBA. Very quickly, just to close up, Damien, I'm going to talk about
Yeah.
Prague, if that's all right, and Marie Bouzkova's win there. It's her first title. Bouzkova, obviously, loads of potential. People have been talking about her for quite a while, so it's quite good to see her finally sort of break through after 3 finals or so and get that first title. A shame about the ranking, obviously, sort of sits around 47, I believe, but really, you should be talking about number 30 in the world, obviously, having made such a good run at Wimbledon. So it's a shame she won't really get to reap the rewards of her run there because, she's playing well enough that she deserves to be seeded at some of the slams, I would say. Oldest player that she defeated, was 21 years old. I don't know how often that happens at a tournament, but every player she played 21 years old or younger, which is crazy. It's certainly experience played a part in the final. Bouzkova 0 winners in the final, but 44 unforced errors from Potapova. That doesn't sound right,
Yeah,
does
yeah.
it?
I saw the
But
stats.
it said it in the stats, but I'm skeptical of it, David. I gotta say, but that's what
How
it
many
said.
points did they even
Doesn't
play?
Yeah, they played 57. So I was like 70%
57
or so.
points?
Sorry, Bouzkova
Oh,
won
okay.
57 points.
But
Sorry.
still, yeah.
So yeah, so you're talking like 44 out of 57 of those were
Yeah.
unforced errors.
That's more doable
Mate.
than playing 57 points in 44 errors.
Yes, of course. Yeah,
Yeah, we
sorry. Yeah,
have
yeah.
to.
That would have been Popova won like
I guess the. I,
10
I think
points
a
or
lot
so.
of the time we see that the person who. I guess it's not the same person. I suppose it's different data scouts, but I feel like on a lot of WTA scoreboards, we've seen this. That the amount of errors can just get crazy. So maybe they're
Yeah.
Maybe they're just counting it a little bit differently than we usually would,
Yeah,
but
I was
still.
gonna say maybe their bar for a forced error is maybe quite low or
Yeah, but
something
it's
like
still
that.
44 out of 89, so it's almost 50% of points if that counting is right.
Yeah,
I suppose that the zero winners count for Bouzkova is actually true though, which makes it
yeah,
super
exactly. Yeah,
crazy that you can win a match 6-0, 6-3 and not hit a single winner. Like that's not happening at the amateur level, that's not happening at any sort of level of the game, and here it happens in a WTA 250 final, which is just insane.
oh, okay, it can happen at amateur level,
I
Damien.
mean,
Trust me,
I don't know, to
definitely.
win a match 6-0, 6-3 and not hit a single winner. Like if you're playing an opponent who's so much weaker than you, I feel like it still hits something. Like it sometimes you just frame a
Yeah,
shot.
probably.
How often I hit these winners where you just frame it and the ball is just,
Yeah,
the angle is so short that it's basically not gettable at all. I was
yeah,
disappointed by this effort from Potapova, that's for sure, because she seems like the player with the more with the higher ceiling of the two probably, and by the way she was
yeah,
playing in Prague, you could expect a better standard. Pretty interesting that she beat
yeah,
3 Chinese players as well on the way to the final. That also must be rare in a Czech 250.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was a shame because it could have been a better final. Totally agree with that, Damien. But yeah, for Bouzkova moving forward, hopefully a deep run. She's had quite bad luck, so yeah, hopefully a deep run that actually gets her the points she deserves, and maybe a top 30 ranking place will be around the corner potentially. Right, Damien, I will close up shop there if
Sure.
that's okay. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, audience, thank you very much for listening this far through. Go catch Damien on Twitter at Damian Kust, please. Go catch me at ontheline_Jack on Twitter, or you can go to ontheline.tennis.uk to catch some of my work. Thank you very much for listening this far through. We'll catch you next time on On the Line Tennis Podcast. Cheers. Thank you.